The tech billionaire's bride hired a wedding planner, but it was the ex-wife he thought was dead. "I know my wife isn't dead," Archer said, his voice barely above a whisper as he stepped closer to the woman claiming to be his wedding planner. "I know she's standing in front of me right now, planning my wedding to another woman. What I don't know is why." The woman's professional facade cracked for just a moment, her green eyes, those unmistakable eyes, flashing with something between fear and defiance. "Your wife died in a bombing 5 years ago," she replied, each word precise and measured. "I'm sorry for your loss, but I'm not her. The scar on your thumb," he continued, reaching for her hand. "From the night you tried to make coco vin and sliced through the tendon. The doctor said you were lucky not to lose function." Her gaze flickered down to her hand before she could stop herself. "Why are you doing this, Maddie?" The nickname slipped out, raw with emotion. "Why come back now like this? Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to come face to face with someone you've mourned for years? To discover that the person whose death shattered your world is not only alive but has been watching you from the shadows? And what would you do if that revelation came just weeks before you were set to marry someone else? I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing the extraordinary story of a tech billionaire whose carefully constructed new life collapsed when his supposedly dead wife reappeared as his wedding planner. This tale of love, betrayal, and redemption will make you question how well we truly know the people closest to us, and what secrets might be hiding behind the perfect facades we present to the world. Archer Blackwood stood at the window of his penthouse office, watching autumn rain lash against the glass. At 42, he had everything most men would envy. A revolutionary tech company valued at $7.8 billion, a reputation as one of the most brilliant minds of his generation, and an upcoming marriage to Victoria Sinclair, the beautiful daughter of his company's largest investor. Yet as he stared at the wedding invitation in his hands, heavy cream cardstock with embossed gold lettering, he felt nothing but emptiness. This wedding wasn't about love. It was the final handshake in a business deal, a strategic alliance that would secure Prometheus Technologies' future and expand its reach into government contracts through the Sinclair family's extensive connections. "The wedding planner needs your approval on the final arrangements," his assistant Jenkins reminded him from the doorway. "She's been waiting for 20 minutes. Archer didn't look up. "Tell her I'll be there shortly." When the door closed, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk and removed a small wooden box. Inside lay a tarnished silver locket containing a photograph of a woman with fierce green eyes and an unguarded smile, Madeline. His first wife. His greatest regret. They had met 12 years ago at a hospital fundraiser. Archer had been there reluctantly, dragged by his then business partner to network with potential investors. Madeline Pierce had been a young doctor, passionate about global medicine and completely unimpressed by the tech wunderkind everyone else was fawning over. "So you've invented an algorithm that helps people shop more efficiently," she'd said, sipping champagne and regarding him with those remarkable green eyes. "Meanwhile, I just came back from a clinic where children are dying because they don't have basic antibiotics. Forgive me if I don't swoon." Instead of being offended, Archer had been captivated. Here was someone who saw through the hype, who challenged him to be better. Their conversation that night had lasted until dawn, ranging from technological ethics to humanitarian crises to their favorite books. By the time the sun rose, Archer knew his life had irrevocably changed. Their courtship had been swift and intense. Madeline pushed Archer to think beyond profit margins, to consider how his technology could address real human suffering. Under her influence, Prometheus pivoted from consumer applications to developing AI systems for medical diagnostics and disaster response. Together, they created a foundation that sent medical technology to underserved regions. They married after just 6 months. A small, intimate ceremony that bore no resemblance to the extravagant event he was now planning with Victoria. Those had been the happiest years of his life, building both a company and a partnership based on shared values and genuine love. Until Madeline had insisted on going to Nyara, a small nation torn apart by civil war. Her medical skills were needed, she'd argued. She would be safe in the international aid compound. It would only be for 3 months. "I have to go, Archer," she'd said, her eyes pleading for understanding. "This is who I am. This is what I do." He had relented, as he always did when it came to her passion for helping others. 3 weeks later, the compound was bombed. There were no survivors identified, no body to bury, just a death certificate and condolences from the State Department. The grief had nearly destroyed him. Then it had transformed him. Without Madeline's moral compass, Archer had redirected Prometheus toward more lucrative government contracts. He'd become ruthless in business, cold in his personal dealings. The idealistic innovator had died alongside his wife, replaced by a calculating businessman who measured everything in terms of strategic advantage, which brought him to Victoria Sinclair. Beautiful, polished, and connected Victoria, whose father Richard controlled the investment capital Archer needed for his next expansion. Their relationship was a mutually beneficial arrangement. She gained the cachet of marrying a tech genius, while he secured his company's future and gained access to her father's government connections. Archer closed the locket and returned it to its hiding place. The past was dead. He had a meeting to attend. Victoria had insisted on hiring the city's most exclusive wedding planner, someone who had orchestrated events for royalty and celebrities alike. Archer hadn't bothered to meet her yet, leaving the details to his fiancée. Weddings were performances, after all, and this one was merely the final scene in a carefully orchestrated business merger. The moment he opened the conference room door, time collapsed around him. Standing at the head of the table, pointing to elaborate floral arrangements on a digital display, was a ghost. If you've ever had that moment where your past and present collide in the most unexpected way, hit that like button right now. And if you're curious about what happens when a man discovers the wife he mourned for 5 years is not only alive but planning his wedding to another woman, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison for more stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Her hair was different, shorter, darker, and a thin scar traced her jawline where none had existed before. But those eyes, that particular shade of green that had haunted his dreams for 5 years, were unmistakable. Madeline, he whispered, the name escaping before he could stop it. The wedding planner turned, her professional smile freezing as their eyes met. For one unguarded moment, recognition flashed across her face, then vanished behind a carefully constructed mask. Mr. Blackwood, she said, her voice steady but slightly higher than it had been moments before. I'm Linnea Gray, your wedding planner. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Linnea Gray, not Madeline Blackwood, not the wife he had mourned, the woman whose death had transformed him into the cold, calculating man he'd become. Yet every instinct screamed that this stranger with her polished appearance and practiced smile was the same woman who had once known every secret corner of his soul. Have we met before? He asked, studying her with an intensity that made his assistant shift uncomfortably. I don't believe so, she replied smoothly, though I've planned events for several tech executives. Perhaps at one of those functions. Perfect deflection. Professional. Practiced. And absolutely false. Perhaps, he conceded, taking a seat at the table. Show me what you've prepared. For the next hour, he barely registered the details she presented. Table settings, menu options, lighting designs. Focusing instead on cataloging every gesture, every inflection that might confirm what he already knew in his bones. The slight tilt of her head when considering a question. The unconscious way she tucked her hair behind her left ear when concentrating. The faint scar on her right thumb, a cooking accident from their first anniversary. This was Madeline, his wife, alive, and planning his wedding to another woman. These all look acceptable, he said abruptly, cutting her off mid-sentence about ceremony music. My fiancé has excellent taste in choosing you. Something flickered in her eyes, pain perhaps or anger, before she nodded professionally. Ms. Sinclair has been wonderful to work with. You make a lovely couple. And yet you've never asked how we met, Archer observed, watching her carefully. Most wedding planners romanticize that story. Her smile remained fixed. I find it's best to maintain professional boundaries, Mr. Blackwood. Your personal history is your own. Is it? He challenged softly. Or is it sometimes shared? The tension between them crackled like static electricity. His assistant glanced between them, clearly sensing the undercurrents but unable to decipher them. "If there's nothing else," Linnea said, gathering her materials with steady hands, "I should be going. We have just 3 weeks until the ceremony, and there's still much to coordinate." "Actually," Archer said, rising from his chair, "I'd like a private word about some personal touches for the ceremony. Jenkins, would you excuse us?" When they were alone, the pretense between them stretched thin as glass. Linnea stood her ground, portfolio clutched against her chest like armor. That night, Archer couldn't sleep. The encounter with Linnea Gray had shaken him to his core. Either he was losing his mind, projecting his dead wife onto a stranger with similar features, or Madeline was alive and deliberately inserting herself into his life under false pretenses. Neither option offered comfort. At 3 a.m., he opened his laptop and began searching. Linnea Gray's wedding planning business, Gray Celebrations, had an impressive website featuring celebrity clients and lavish events. According to her bio, she had been in business for 4 years, specializing in high-profile weddings after a career in event management for international hotels. But when he dug deeper, the inconsistencies emerged. No social media presence older than 4 years. No mentions in industry publications before that time. Her business license had been issued exactly 4 years and 2 months ago, roughly 9 months after Madeline's death. By dawn, Archer had compiled enough evidence to convince himself he wasn't crazy. The woman calling herself Linnea Gray had appeared out of nowhere shortly after Madeline disappeared. Her credentials were impeccable but shallow, as if constructed rather than earned. And most tellingly, Victoria had mentioned that her father had specifically recommended this particular wedding planner, Richard Sinclair. The connection sent a chill through Archer. What did Victoria's father have to do with Madeline's reappearance? He made one call before heading to his office. "Jenkins, I need you to clear my schedule this afternoon and find out where Linnea Gray is meeting with the florist today." 3 hours later, Archer walked into an upscale floral design studio in the Arts District. Linnea was alone, examining arrangements of white roses and orchids. She looked up when the bell above the door announced his arrival, her professional smile faltering when she recognized him. "Mr. Blackwood, this is unexpected." "Is it?" He approached slowly, deliberately. "I thought we should continue our conversation from yesterday, in private." Her eyes darted to the door behind him. "The designer will be back any moment." "No, she won't. I called and rescheduled your appointment." Told her Ms. Sinclair had a change of heart about the arrangements. Color drained from her face. That was presumptuous. Was it? Or was it necessary? He moved closer until barely a foot separated them. "I spent all night convincing myself I wasn't crazy, that the woman standing in front of me really is my wife." "Mr. Blackwood, the scar on your thumb," he said, stepping closer. "From the night you tried to make cocoa vin and sliced through the tendon. The doctor said you were lucky not to lose function." Her gaze flickered down to her hand before she could stop herself. "The way you tuck your hair behind your left ear when you're thinking," he continued. "The small birthmark behind your right knee. The fact that you're allergic to strawberries but eat them anyway because you say the pleasure is worth the pain." "Stop," she whispered, the portfolio trembling in her grasp. "Why are you doing this, Maddie?" The nickname slipped out, raw with emotion. "Why the charade? Why come back now, like this?" For a moment he thought she would maintain the lie. Then her shoulders sagged, the perfect posture of Linnea Gray giving way to something more familiar, more real. "Because I needed to see for myself," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "I needed to know if what they told me was true." "What? Who told you?" "True about what?" "That you'd changed. That you'd become." She gestured vaguely at his expensive suit, his cold demeanor. The man who's marrying for business advantage rather than love." Anger flared, hot and sudden. "You don't get to judge me. Not after disappearing for 5 years. Letting me believe you were dead." "I didn't have a choice." The words burst from her, passionate and pained. "The bombing was real, Archer. I was injured, unidentifiable. When I woke up, men in suits were there. telling me that returning to my life would put everyone I loved in danger. That what I'd seen in that camp made me a target. What you'd seen? He repeated, confusion momentarily displacing his anger. The camp wasn't just treating civilians, she explained, her voice dropping. It was a cover for intelligence gathering. I was a doctor without borders who stumbled into something I was never supposed to see. They gave me a choice. Disappear into witness protection or risk bringing danger back to you. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. For 5 years, he'd constructed a narrative of abandonment around her disappearance. That she'd chosen her humanitarian work over their marriage. That she'd been reckless, careless with her safety and his heart. The possibility that she'd been protecting him had never entered his calculations. And now? He asked, struggling to process this new reality. Why risk coming back? Her eyes met his unflinching. Because 6 months ago, they told me the threat was neutralized. That I could reclaim my life if I wanted to. A bitter smile twisted her lips. Except when I looked for you, I found a man I barely recognized, engaged to the daughter of Richard Sinclair, whose company, coincidentally, has defense contracts with the very people who kept me hidden all these years. If you're shocked by this revelation, hit that like button right now. And ask yourself, what would you do if you discovered someone you loved had been forced to disappear to protect you? Stay tuned as we uncover the conspiracy that tore this couple apart and the dangerous game they're now playing. The implications crashed over Archer in waves. Richard Sinclair, Prometheus's largest investor. The man whose daughter he was set to marry in 3 weeks. The man whose connections to government intelligence agencies had always been rumored but never confirmed. You think Sinclair knows who you are? Archer said slowly. That this wedding is connected to what happened to you. I think there are no coincidences at this level, she replied. And I needed to see for myself what kind of man you've become before I decided what to do next. The distance between them, physical, emotional, temporal, suddenly seemed both vast and insignificant. 5 years of grief and rage and reinvention hung in the balance against the undeniable truth that the woman he had never stopped loving was alive, standing before him, challenging everything he had built in her absence. And what have you decided? He asked, his voice rough with emotion. Madeline, not Linnea, never truly Linnea, studied him with those penetrating green eyes that had once seen through every defense he'd ever constructed. That depends, she said quietly, on what you do next. They moved their conversation to a small cafe 3 blocks away, tucked into a corner booth where they wouldn't be recognized. Archer couldn't stop staring at her, cataloging the changes. The new scar along her jawline, the wariness that hadn't been there before, the way she constantly scanned the room. A habit born of years living in fear. Tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. Madeline wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, as if drawing strength from its warmth. The bombing was real. I was treating patients when it happened. I remember the ceiling collapsing, then nothing until I woke up in a military hospital with no identification. My face was damaged enough that immediate recognition wasn't possible. But they knew who you were. Yes, while I was unconscious, they ran my fingerprints. That's when everything changed. She took a shaky breath. 2 men came to my room. They explained that the medical camp had been used as cover for intelligence gathering on a terrorist organization called the Crimson Hand. I had apparently treated one of their high-ranking members and, without realizing it, seen classified documents in his possession. And they decided you were a liability, Archer said, the pieces falling into place. They said the bombing wasn't an accident. It was targeted at the intelligence operation, but I was now on their radar too. They gave me a choice. Enter witness protection or risk bringing danger back to you and everyone else I loved. The weight of her sacrifice settled over Archer. While he had been building walls around his heart, transforming grief into cold ambition, she had been living in exile to protect him. Why didn't they just bring you home with security? Why the elaborate death? They said the Crimson Hand had infiltrated too many agencies. That the only way to ensure safety was if everyone, including you, believed I was truly dead. Her voice broke slightly. I begged them to at least let me send you a message, something to let you know I was alive. They refused. And now? What changed? 6 months ago, my handler told me the main leaders of the Crimson Hand had been eliminated. The threat was considered neutralized. I could reclaim my life if I wanted to. She looked down at her hands. I started researching what had happened to you. That's when I discovered you were engaged to Victoria Sinclair. And you recognized the name. Richard Sinclair was mentioned several times during my debriefings. Never directly, but enough that I knew he had connections to the intelligence community. Her eyes met his. When I saw his daughter was marrying you, it felt deliberate, like you were being pulled into something. So you created an opportunity to get close, to investigate. Victoria's previous wedding planner had a sudden family emergency. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Amazing how that happens when certain government agencies make a phone call. I was recommended as a replacement with an impeccable, if somewhat manufactured, reputation. Archer leaned back, processing everything. What exactly did you see in Yara? What made you so dangerous to them? I'm not entirely sure. The patient was delirious with fever when I treated him. He had a leather case with him that fell open. Documents, photos of what looked like weapons installations. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was focused on saving his life. But enough that they bombed an entire medical camp to eliminate the leak. Yes. Her voice was barely audible. 37 people died because I saw something I shouldn't have. The guilt in her eyes was unbearable. Archer reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The familiar touch sent electricity through him, a connection he'd thought forever severed now reestablished. None of that was your fault, he said firmly. You were doing your job, saving lives. So were you, she replied. Before I disappeared. Before you became this. She gestured vaguely at him. What happened to the man who wanted to use technology to make the world better? Who cared about more than profit margins and strategic alliances? The question stung because it contained truth. He died, or thought he did. When I lost you. Their eyes held for a long moment, years of pain and longing suspended between them. Then Archer straightened, his mind shifting into the analytical mode that had built his empire. We need to understand what Sinclair's game is. Why he maneuvered his daughter into my life. Why he's so invested in Prometheus. I've been trying to piece it together, Madeline said. Victoria seems genuinely attached to you, but Richard. There's something calculated about his interest in your company. Prometheus has developed several AI systems with military applications, Archer admitted. Surveillance analysis, predictive threat assessment. Sinclair's investment came just as we were securing the first government contracts. Contracts through agencies he has connections with, Madeline added. It's all connected somehow, Nyara. The Crimson Hand, Sinclair, your company. We need proof. Something concrete linking Sinclair to what happened to you. I've been trying. That's why I took the wedding planner position. It gives me access to his home, his offices. But so far, I've found nothing definitive. Archer's phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. Where are you? Father wants to discuss the rehearsal dinner guest list. Says it's urgent. He showed the message to Madeline. I need to go, but we're not finished. Be careful, she warned. If Sinclair suspects anything. I've been playing the cold, calculating businessman for 5 years, Archer said, standing. I can maintain the facade a little longer. He hesitated, then added softly, knowing you're alive changes everything, Maddie. Does it? She challenged. You're still engaged. The wedding is still happening in 3 weeks. For now, he replied, until we understand what we're dealing with. I need you to trust me. Trust goes both ways, she reminded him. No more secrets between us. As they parted outside the cafe, Archer fought the overwhelming urge to pull her into his arms, to verify through touch that she was real, not another grief-induced hallucination. Instead, he simply said, tomorrow, my office. Come as Linnea with wedding details. We'll talk more then. She nodded, then turned and walked away, her posture once again transforming into the confident stride of Linnea Gray, wedding planner extraordinaire. Watching her disappear around the corner, Archer felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. Hope. If you've ever had to pretend to be someone you're not to protect those you love, hit that like button. And if you're wondering how deep this conspiracy goes and whether Archer and Madeline can find their way back to each other, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The most dangerous part of their journey is just beginning. The Sinclair estate sprawled across 10 manicured acres, a monument to old money and careful cultivation of power. As Archer's car passed through the wrought iron gates, he mentally prepared himself for the performance ahead. For 5 years, he'd built a reputation as a calculating businessman interested primarily in strategic advantage. Now that mask would serve a different purpose. Victoria greeted him in the grand foyer, elegant as always in a designer dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. She kissed his cheek, her perfume expensive and subtle. "Darling, you're late. Father's been asking for you." "Unavoidable meeting," he replied smoothly. "The Singapore expansion is hitting some regulatory hurdles." She linked her arm through his, guiding him toward her father's study. "The wedding planner called. She said you had some concerns about the arrangements." Archer kept his expression neutral. "Just some details about the technology integration. Nothing important." "Well, I think she's marvelous." Father's recommendation was spot on, as usual. "As usual," Archer echoed, filing away this confirmation of Sinclair's direct involvement in bringing Linnea into their lives. Richard Sinclair rose from behind his massive desk as they entered, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting the perfect image of distinguished wealth. At 68, he still maintained the physical presence of the military man he'd once been before building Sinclair Defense Technologies into a contracting giant. "Archer, there you are. I was beginning to think you'd gotten cold feet." His laugh was practiced, designed to put others at ease while revealing nothing of his own thoughts. "Just business, Richard. You know how it is." "Indeed I do." Sinclair gestured to the leather chairs facing his desk. "Victoria, be a dear and check on dinner. I need a few minutes with my future son-in-law." Once they were alone, Sinclair's genial expression shifted subtly, becoming more focused, more calculating. "I've been reviewing the integration plans for after the wedding. Prometheus's AI systems paired with Sinclair's defense contracts will revolutionize military intelligence." "That's the plan," Archer agreed, watching the older man carefully. "Though I'm still not clear on why the personal merger was necessary. A corporate partnership would have sufficed." Sinclair smiled thinly. "Family businesses stay family businesses, Archer. I needed to know you were fully committed to our shared vision. Nothing demonstrates commitment like marriage. To your daughter, Victoria admires you greatly. She understands the importance of strategic alliances." Sinclair leaned forward. "But that's not why I wanted to speak with you. There's been a security concern at Prometheus that my people have flagged." Archer's pulse quickened, though his expression remained impassive. "What kind of concern?" "Someone accessed classified files on Project Oracle last night. The quantum encryption system you're developing for the Defense Department." "That's impossible. Those files are on an air-gapped system." "Nevertheless, they were accessed. By your credentials." Sinclair's eyes were cold now, assessing. "Is there something I should know, Archer?" "Second thoughts about our arrangement." "None whatsoever," Archer replied smoothly. "But I'll look into the security breach immediately. Probably a glitch in the logging system." "See that you do." Sinclair stood, signaling the end of the conversation. "We're too close to completion to allow complications now." As they walked to the dining room, Archer's mind raced. Someone had used his credentials to access Project Oracle, a military AI system designed to predict and neutralize threats before they materialized. The same type of system that might have identified threats in Yara 5 years ago. Victoria was waiting for them, along with her mother Eleanor, a quiet woman who had perfected the art of ornamental presence at her husband's side. The conversation over dinner was light and superficial, wedding details, society gossip, safe political observations. Until Victoria said, "I ran into your wedding planner today, at that little cafe near the Arts District." She was with a man who looked remarkably like you, darling. Archer's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Really? Must have been someone else. I was in meetings all day. That's what I thought, Victoria replied, her tone casual but her eyes sharp, though she seemed quite intense in her conversation, almost intimate. Perhaps she has a personal relationship with one of her vendors, Eleanor suggested mildly. That lovely florist she recommended, perhaps. Perhaps, Victoria conceded, though her gaze remained fixed on Archer. In any case, I reminded her that we need to finalize the seating arrangements tomorrow. She'll be at your office at 10. I'll make sure my schedule is clear, Archer said, forcing a smile. Later, as he was leaving, Victoria walked him to his car. Away from her parents, her perfectly composed facade slipped slightly. Who is she to you? She asked directly. Who? Don't play games, Archer. The wedding planner. I saw how you looked at each other during the presentation. I'm not blind. Archer considered his options carefully. Victoria was more perceptive than he'd given her credit for, and potentially a valuable ally or a dangerous enemy. She reminds me of someone I used to know, he said finally. It's disconcerting. Someone you loved? Someone who died. Victoria studied him for a long moment. There's more to this story, isn't there? More than you're telling me. Victoria. No, don't. She held up a hand. I've always known ours wasn't a love match, Archer. I accepted that. But I did expect honesty. The genuine hurt in her voice surprised him. It's complicated. Isn't it always? She stepped back. Just remember, my father doesn't tolerate complications. Neither do I. As he drove away, Archer called Madeline on a burner phone he'd purchased that afternoon. Someone accessed Project Oracle using my credentials, he said without preamble when she answered. Sinclair knows. It wasn't me, she replied immediately. But I did find something. In Victoria's private study. Documents linking Sinclair defense to operations in Yara 5 years ago. The bombing, not explicitly, but enough to establish they had personnel on the ground when it happened. Her voice lowered. Archer, I think Sinclair might have been running the intelligence operation at my camp. The one the Crimson Hand targeted. Which means he might have been responsible for putting you in witness protection. Or responsible for making sure I stayed dead, she countered. We need those Oracle files. They might show what really happened. It's too dangerous. Sinclair's watching now. We don't have a choice. The wedding is in 3 weeks. Once you're married to Victoria, you'll be under constant surveillance. Archer made a decision. Tomorrow, when you come to my office, we'll access the files together. There's something else, Madeline said, her voice tense. I think Victoria suspects who I am. She approached me today, asked very specific questions about my background. She confronted me too. We need to move quickly. Be careful, Archer. If Sinclair realizes who I am, he won't, Archer promised. I won't lose you again. The line went silent for a moment. Then softly, you never really had me back. The words hit him like a physical blow, a reminder of the chasm still between them. Maddie. Tomorrow, she said firmly. 10 o'clock. After she hung up, Archer sat in his parked car, staring at the darkened windows of his penthouse. 5 years ago, he'd shared that space with Madeline, filling it with laughter and passion and purpose. Now it was just a place to sleep between building an empire he no longer cared about. Everything was unraveling, his engagement, his company, his carefully constructed new identity. And yet, for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. If you've ever had to choose between the safe path you've built and the risky one your heart demands, hit that like button. And if you're wondering whether Archer and Madeline can uncover the truth before it's too late, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The most shocking revelations are yet to come. Morning arrived with a sense of foreboding. Archer reached his office early, dismissing his assistant for the day with instructions not to disturb him. At precisely 10 o'clock, the elevator doors opened, and Madeline stepped out, perfectly composed in her Linnea gray persona, portfolio in hand. "Good morning, Mr. Blackwood," she said loudly for the benefit of anyone listening. "I have those seating arrangements for your approval." Once inside his office with the door locked, she dropped the act. "We don't have much time. Victoria called me this morning, asking me to meet her for lunch to discuss a special surprise for you." "That doesn't sound ominous at all," Archer said dryly, moving to his computer. "Let's get what we need and get out." He logged into the secure system, navigating through layers of encryption to reach Project Oracle. "What exactly are we looking for?" "Anything related to Operation Watchful Eye. That was the code name I overheard during my debriefings." Archer typed rapidly, searching through classified files. "Here. Operation Watchful Eye, Nyara deployment, 5 years ago." He opened the file and they both leaned forward, scanning the contents. "My God," Madeline whispered as the truth unfolded before them. The operation had indeed been run by Sinclair Defense, using medical humanitarian missions as cover for intelligence gathering on the Crimson Hand. But the bombing hadn't been carried out by terrorists. It had been authorized by Richard Sinclair himself when he discovered a leak in his operation. "He killed 37 innocent people to protect his intelligence network," Archer said, his voice tight with rage, "and then used your survival to manipulate you into disappearing." "But why?" Madeline pressed. "Why go to such lengths?" Archer continued searching, opening file after file until he found the answer in a heavily redacted report. Project Oracle. It wasn't just being developed now. A prototype was being field-tested in Nyara. A predictive AI system designed to identify and eliminate threats before they materialized. "Like Minority Report," Madeline said. "Punishing people for crimes they haven't committed yet." "Exactly. And it failed catastrophically. It identified the wrong targets, leading to the deaths of dozens of civilians. The documents you saw belonged to a whistleblower trying to expose the program." Archer's face hardened. "Sinclair covered it up by bombing the entire camp, then kept you in witness protection to ensure you couldn't reveal what you'd seen. And now he's using you to rebuild the system," Madeline realized. "Your AI expertise, combined with his defense contracts." "He needs me to fix what went wrong," Archer finished. "And he's using Victoria to ensure my cooperation." The office phone rang, startling them both. Archer answered cautiously. "Mr. Blackwood." His receptionist's voice came through, sounding confused. "Ms. Sinclair is here to see you. She says it's urgent." Archer and Madeline exchanged alarmed glances. "Tell her I'll be right out," he said, then hung up. "You need to hide. The private bathroom, quickly." Madeline grabbed the flash drive containing the copied files and slipped into the adjoining bathroom just as Archer opened his office door. Victoria stood in the reception area, impeccably dressed as always, but with an unusual tension in her posture. "Archer, we need to talk. Privately." He ushered her into his office, heart pounding. "This is unexpected. I thought we were meeting later." "Plans change," she said coolly, glancing around the room. "Is your wedding planner here? I was told she had an appointment with you." "She left already. Just dropped off some papers for me to review." Victoria nodded slowly, then reached into her purse and withdrew a photograph, placing it on his desk. "Do you want to explain this?" Archer looked down and felt his blood freeze. It was a surveillance photo of him and Madeline at the cafe yesterday, his hand covering hers on the table, their faces intimate in conversation. "Victoria, don't bother lying," she cut him off. "I know exactly who she is, or rather who she was. Madeline Blackwood, your supposedly dead wife." The bathroom door opened, and Madeline stepped out, her disguise abandoned. "He didn't know until yesterday," she said quietly. "Don't blame him for this." Victoria's laugh was bitter. "How noble. Protecting each other already." She turned back to Archer. "Did you really think my father wouldn't have you investigated thoroughly before allowing this marriage? We've known about her for months." "Then you know your father is responsible for the bombing that nearly killed her," Archer said, watching Victoria's reaction carefully. "That he's been manipulating both of us." Something flickered in Victoria's eyes, surprise, then calculation. What exactly do you think you know? Everything, Madeline said, stepping forward. Operation Watchful Eye. Project Oracle. The failed AI system that killed innocent civilians. Your father's cover-up. We have proof, Archer added. Enough to destroy Sinclair defense and send your father to prison. Victoria was silent for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, she sank into a chair. So you found it. I was beginning to think no one ever would. What? Archer and Madeline spoke in unison. Why do you think I pushed for this marriage, Archer? Why I insisted on this particular wedding planner when I recognized her? Victoria looked up, her eyes suddenly tired. I needed someone with the skills and motivation to expose what my father did. You knew? Madeline asked incredulously. Not at first. But I found documents, overheard conversations. Enough to piece it together. Victoria's perfectly manicured hands twisted in her lap. My father has always been ruthless, but this was monstrous. I couldn't live with it anymore. So you set this whole thing up, Archer said slowly. Used our engagement to bring Madeline back into the open. I suspected she was alive. Father was too careful about certain things. Too interested in your personal life. Victoria looked at Madeline. When I saw your application as Linnea Gray, with your carefully constructed background, I knew immediately. The resemblance is subtle now, but unmistakable to someone looking for it. Why not just go to the authorities yourself? Madeline asked. With what? Suspicions? Fragments of overheard conversations? I needed concrete proof. Victoria stood. Which you now have. But we need to move quickly. Father's security team reported your access to the Oracle files this morning. He'll be coming for all of us. As if summoned by her words, Archer's private elevator began ascending. The indicator light showing it had been activated from the lobby. That's him, Victoria said, suddenly urgent. We need to go. Now. Why should we trust you? Madeline demanded. Because I'm as much a victim of his manipulations as you are, Victoria replied. And because I have a way out that he doesn't know about. The decision took only seconds. Archer grabbed his laptop while Madeline pocketed the flash drive. Victoria led them to a service stairwell hidden behind a panel in Archer's private bathroom. A security feature he hadn't even known existed. Your building security was upgraded last year, Victoria explained as they descended rapidly. Father insisted on certain modifications. They emerged in an underground parking garage where a nondescript car waited. Victoria handed the keys to Archer. This isn't registered to any of us. Take it and go to this address. She passed him a slip of paper. My contact in the Justice Department will meet you there. Give him everything you've found. You're not coming? Madeline asked. Victoria shook her head. I need to delay my father. Make him think I'm helping him find you. It's the only way this works. Archer hesitated. Victoria, don't, she interrupted. We were never in love, Archer. But I did respect you. Enough to know you deserved the truth. Now go. As they drove away, Madeline looked back to see Victoria walking calmly toward the elevator, straightening her jacket, preparing for her final performance as the dutiful daughter. Do you think she'll be okay? Madeline asked softly. Victoria's stronger than she appears, Archer replied, navigating through traffic. She's been playing her father's game for years, waiting for the right moment to end it. 3 days later, the news broke worldwide. Richard Sinclair arrested on charges of conspiracy, murder, and war crimes. Sinclair Defense Technologies stock plummeted as details of Project Oracle emerged. Victoria Sinclair, hailed as a key whistleblower, announced her intention to restructure the company toward humanitarian applications. In a small coastal town 300 miles away, Archer and Madeline sat on the deck of a rented cottage, watching the sunset over the ocean. What happens now? Madeline asked, her hand finding his. We can't just pick up where we left off 5 years ago. Too much has changed. Everything has changed, Archer agreed. Except the most important thing. He turned to face her. I never stopped loving you, Maddie. Even when I thought you were gone. Even when I tried to bury that love under ambition and cold logic. It was still there. And Prometheus? Your company. Just a company. One that needs to rediscover its original purpose. He squeezed her hand. With the right partner, I think we could rebuild it into something that actually helps people. The way we always planned. Madeline smiled, the setting sun illuminating her face with golden light. I'd like that. A fresh start. For both of us, Archer said, pulling her close. No more secrets. No more pretending to be people we're not. As they sealed this promise with a kiss, Archer reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. A wedding that would never happen had reunited him with the wife he thought he'd lost. A strategic alliance had crumbled, revealing a deeper, truer connection. And the man he'd become in grief was finally giving way to the man he was always meant to be. Sometimes, the most unexpected detours lead us exactly where we need to go. If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. Remember that sometimes what appears to be the end of your story might just be the beginning of a new chapter. True love doesn't always follow a straight path, but it finds a way to endure through even the darkest circumstances. Share in the comments a time when you discovered that what you thought was lost might still be found.